She thought she was just a hotel maid, until the billionaire saw her necklace and froze. It belonged to his baby sister, the one who was buried over 2 decades ago. When he demanded answers, the truth that followed didn't just expose a stolen past. It threatened to unravel everything he believed about his family and about her. Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. The hallway of the Langston Grand shimmered with gold accents and hushed wealth. At the top floor, where only a few had access, the penthouse suite stood silent, until the door creaked open, revealing a young woman in a faded uniform gripping a supply cart. Sienna Cruz stepped in quietly, her footsteps muffled by the Persian rug. She was 23, small, serious, and moved like someone who'd spent most of her life trying not to be seen. The room smelled of citrus cleaner and forgotten opulence. Guests like these never noticed the staff unless something went wrong. She adjusted the edge of the king-size duvet, then moved toward the coffee table. Someone had left cufflinks there, gold, with a Wolfe insignia. She recognized it from the company badge, Wolfe Enterprises. She picked them up with care and placed them in the tray beside the minibar. The vase on the windowsill was tilted. She bent to straighten it, her eyes lingering for a moment on the view of Manhattan's skyline. The city always looked prettier from above. There, the door slammed behind her. Sienna jumped, her heart flying into her throat. She turned and froze. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stood just inside the doorway. Broad-shouldered, composed, and clearly furious about something. His jaw was set, eyes shadowed beneath thick brows, and she recognized him from television, magazines, and office gossip. Grayson Wolfe. Grayson Wolfe, she stammered, stepping back instinctively. I thought the suite was empty. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... He raised a hand, silencing her with an expression as cold as ice. Leave it. She had just knocked the vase slightly again, and it was beginning to lean. Her hand hovered. He said, leave it. Sienna lowered her arm, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but she held his stare a second longer than most would have. Then she dropped her eyes, pivoted toward her cart, and began backing out. He turned away from her, and then stopped. Something had caught his eye. His brows furrowed, his breathing shifted. Wait. Sienna turned halfway, confused. His voice was no longer cold, it was shaking. That necklace, where did you get that necklace? She instinctively reached for it. Her fingers curled protectively over the small, delicate silver locket resting just above her collarbone. It had 2 blue sapphires, set like tiny eyes. The chain was thin but strong. She'd worn it every day since she could remember. It was my mother's, she said slowly, uneased by the way he was looking at her. Grayson took a step closer, his gaze locked on the locket like it had pulled something from a grave. Elena smiled, opened wide. Sienna's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? He didn't blink. She died. When she was a baby. They buried her with it. A chill moved through Sienna's spine. It's not possible, she said, almost in a whisper. You must be mistaken. He was already shaking his head. I remember that necklace. I was 10. My father had it made. It was unique, one of a kind. She staggered back a step. My mother gave it to me. She said it was the only thing she ever kept from before I was born. What's her name? Grayson asked, now steady but intense. She hesitated, her lips parted, but nothing came. Here to avoid ruining his marriage. Right now? Sienna's fingers clenched around the necklace. I think I should go, Grayson said, stepping in her path. Not until you tell me who you are. Sienna's heart thundered in her chest. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel something unraveling beneath the surface. The billionaire wasn't just staring at her necklace. He was looking at her as if she were a ghost from a life he thought was buried long ago. She gripped the cleaning cart tightly and tried to steady her voice. I'm just a maid. I clean rooms. I didn't steal anything, and I don't know what you think this necklace means, but... It means everything, Grayson said, cutting her off. His eyes weren't cold now, they were raw, haunted. That necklace was buried with Isabel. Isabel, she repeated. His sister, he said. She died when she was just a few months old. Or, that's what I was told. Sienna stared at him. I don't know what kind of game this is, she said, her voice trembling despite herself, but I'm not part of it. Grayson reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He swiped quickly and then turned the screen to her. A blurry photograph, clearly old, showed a baby in a hospital crib, wrapped in soft blankets. Around the infant's tiny neck was a necklace. Her necklace. Sienna took a step back, as if the image itself had struck her. That can't be. He watched her reaction closely. What's your last name? She hesitated. Everything inside her told her not to answer, but something else, some strange pull, steadied her to speak. She said quietly. Sienna Cruz. The name seemed to ignite something in him. Your mother's name. Does it matter? She snapped, more frightened than angry. Because, he said, stepping closer. My family had a nanny named Elena Cruz. Sienna froze, her lips parted. Elena's my mother. The silence between them deepened until it felt suffocating. Grayson's voice was hollow. She disappeared the same week my sister did. The police couldn't prove anything. My parents said she ran off with a man. But my sister, Isabel, was gone. Sienna's breath caught. Mother told me I was born in another state, that she'd left everything behind because it was dangerous, she whispered. I never knew my father. We moved a lot. I never questioned it. Grayson's expression tightened. We need to do a DNA test. She said instantly, backing away. This is insane. You think I'm your dead sister? Based on a necklace? Feel it too, he said. Don't lie. Sienna turned and reached for the door. Come on. Right now? Trust me. And Rebecca gripped his hands tightened. But you deserve to know the truth. She paused with her hand on the knob. If you don't want a truth, she said quietly, I want my life back. Grayson's shoulders dropped, defeated. At least take this. He reached into his pocket and offered her a business card. Sienna didn't take it. He placed it on the side table and nodded once. If you ever want answers, call me. She turned the knob and stepped out into the hallway, unsure if she was escaping or running from something she'd never be able to leave behind. As the door clicked shut behind her, Grayson stared at the now empty room. His chest ached. He'd come home early to escape a board meeting. Instead, he'd walked into a mystery wrapped in a maid's uniform, wearing the only proof that his sister might still be alive. She had his mother's locket, the same one he watched be buried 23 years ago. Grayson stormed down the hallway, ignoring the startled bellhop and a passing guest. The moment he caught sight of Sienna exiting the staff elevator, he called out, Sienna. She didn't stop. He picked up his pace. Sienna, wait. She turned sharply. What do you want from me? Grayson didn't blink. Answers. I don't have any, she snapped. You do, he insisted, stepping closer. That necklace? Left it, she interrupted. It's yours, apparently. So that's not what this is about, he said. Tell me, where is your mother? Sienna swallowed. Her voice wavered. Why does that matter? Because I think she worked for my family. Her name, what is it? Sienna hesitated, every muscle tense. Elena Cruz. The name landed like a thunderclap. Grayson staggered back a step. She was our nanny. She vanished, the same week Isabel did. Sienna's eyes searched his. You really believe I'm her? I don't know what I believe, he admitted, but I know something isn't right, and I need to know the truth. Sienna shook her head. You're talking about a life I've never known, a name I've never heard until today. Here's a way to find out, Grayson said gently. A DNA test, simple, fast. And she said immediately, her eyes flaring. I don't need your science to tell me who I am. You're scared. Wouldn't you be? She snapped. What if you find out you were never who you thought you were? He stepped forward again. And what if you find out you're someone worth more than they ever told you? Sienna's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes welled with something she didn't want to show. Then she turned and walked away. Grayson didn't follow. When the elevator doors closed, Sienna leaned against the wall, her breath catching. In the penthouse suite, Grayson stood staring at the necklace she had left behind. The sapphires caught the light like tears frozen in silver. He clenched his jaw, then pulled out his phone. "Claire, cancel my meetings. I need access to all Wolfe family files from 1999. I want hospital reports, police statements, nanny employment records, everything." "Asked Mr. Wolfe," his assistant said. He hung up, went to the liquor cabinet, and poured himself a drink he didn't touch. Across town, Sienna burst through the door of a tiny walk-up apartment. Her mother, Elena, stood at the stove in a worn apron, humming softly. Sienna's voice cracked the air. "Am I who he says I am?" Elena turned, startled. "What?" Sienna stepped forward, fists clenched. "Is my name even mine?" Elena's face drained of color. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "No more stories, no more silence. Just tell me. Am I his sister?" Elena sat down slowly, her knees trembling. She looked 10 years older in an instant. "You were taken," she whispered. Sienna's world tilted. "Not by me." Tears brimmed in Sienna's eyes. "Then who?" Elena reached into a drawer and pulled out a photograph. Faded, crinkled, but preserved like treasure. It showed her younger, holding a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. A tiny silver necklace gleamed just beneath the child's chin. "You were left in my care when you were only a few weeks old," Elena said. "Your mother," his mother, "was having problems, emotional. She wasn't well. Your father asked me to stay overnight to help. He was away. That night, your mother snapped. She accused me of things I didn't do. I was terrified." Sienna could barely breathe. "What happened?" "She put you outside, in the rain. I found you crying on the back porch." Elena's voice trembled as she continued, the weight of years pressing on her chest. "I wrapped you in towels, held you all night. When morning came, she denied everything. She said, 'You were gone, stolen.' And then she told me to disappear." Sienna sat down, the floor beneath her feeling unstable. "She told you to leave?" "She threatened me," Elena said softly. "Said no one would believe me, that she'd ruin me if I stayed. So I took you. I didn't have a plan, just instinct and fear. I bought a bus ticket to anywhere and never looked back." Sienna whispered. "So you did take me?" "I saved you," Elena corrected, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You were cold, forgotten. I wasn't your kidnapper, Sienna. I was the only one who wanted you alive." Sienna looked down, her breath shaky. "But you lied. My whole life died to protect you, to keep you safe. If they'd found us, they would have taken you back to her. And she didn't deserve you." Sienna turned her face away, heart pounding in her ears. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Meanwhile, across the city, Grayson was in the family's private archive room, digging through files lined with decades of secrets. His assistant had unearthed the 1999 incident report from Memorial Hills Hospital. He flipped open the folder. It was all there. Baby Isabel Wolfe, born February 17, 1999, discharged in stable condition. Last seen in the nursery at 3:27 a.m. on March 10. Reported missing by her mother at 6:00 a.m. He turned to a police statement. No signs of forced entry, no security camera footage preserved. A single name stood out: Sienna Cruz, nanny. Suspicion noted, but no charges filed. Fled the state the next day. Grayson exhaled sharply. He picked up his phone and dialed. His mother answered, her voice clipped. "Grayson, what is it? I thought you had meetings. I need to ask you something, and I want the truth." A pause. "You're scaring me. Did you lie about Isabel's death?" The line went cold. He pressed. Did you cover up what happened? His mother's voice, when it returned, was low, calculated. What are you talking about? I met someone, Grayson said. A maid at the hotel. She had Isabel's necklace. She might be her. His mother snapped. That's not possible. Is it? He asked. Because I have the original hospital reports. And I know Sienna Cruz didn't steal her. She ran, his mother hissed. Because you told her to, Grayson replied, his voice flat. What did you do that night, mother? Silence. Were you unwell? Did something happen? Still nothing. Grayson's chest tightened. I need to find out, whether you help me or not. And he hung up. Back at the apartment, Sienna stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked the same, but everything else had shifted. I might be someone else entirely, she whispered. Alina stood in the doorway. You're still my daughter, that hasn't changed. It's not my name, Sienna said, not my birth, not my truth. Alina agreed. But your life, the love we built, that was real. Sienna closed her eyes, caught between fury and grief. Later that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one thought refused to leave her. If what Elena said was true, then she had a brother. And that brother had looked into her eyes and seen someone he lost. Someone he'd mourned his whole life. Someone who might still be alive. Elena sat at the edge of the bed, her hands folded tightly in her lap, while Sienna paced across the room, the necklace now clutched in her fingers. The night air was still, heavy with the weight of words not yet spoken. You were the nanny, Sienna finally said. You worked for them. You knew them. Elena nodded, her voice low. Yes, I cared for Grayson when he was little, and when his mother had the baby, I was there every day, feeding her, rocking her. She wasn't just a job to me. She was light in a house full of shadows. Sienna turned. You told me she was sick, that she died. I lied, Elena said, tears surfacing, because that was the story they wanted the world to believe. Really happened? Sienna asked, almost afraid of the answer. Elena's lips trembled. One night, I came into the nursery and found Vivienne standing over the crib. She wasn't holding you. She was staring at you like you were a problem, like you didn't belong. Sienna sat down slowly. Told me the baby had died, Elena said. Told me to leave, that there was nothing to do. But I saw you breathing, your chest, it was rising. Barely, but it was. She's going to let me die, Sienna whispered. She was going to abandon you, Elena said. She told me you were a mistake, that you weren't her husband's child. She didn't want anyone to know. You weren't a baby to her, you were evidence. Sienna's hands shook. So you ran? Night before, Elena confirmed. With no plan, just instinct. I bought a bus ticket, changed our names, started over. You were my baby from that moment on. Not by blood, but by every choice I made. Sienna stared at her, tears falling freely now. You could have left me. I couldn't, Elena said. Not when you looked at me like I was your entire world. Sienna wiped her cheeks. You raised me with love. I felt it every day. Elena smiled weakly. That's what matters. Meanwhile, across the city, Grayson stepped into the Wolfe estate, his footsteps echoing through the marble halls. He found his mother on the balcony, sipping wine as if the past hadn't cracked wide open. Vivienne? She turned, serene. Grayson? I know the truth. She raised a brow. Which version? One you buried with silence, he said. The one where you let everyone believe your daughter died. Hers wasn't his, Vivienne said coolly, her voice like ice over glass. She was never meant to be. Grayson's jaw tightened. She was my sister. Vivienne exhaled, unfazed. She was a stain on our name, a reminder of everything your father failed to control. I did what I had to do. You lied, Grayson said. To me. To the world. Protected the family. You destroyed it, he spat. Vivienne stood, her face expressionless. What would you have had me do? Parade her through society? Admit the affair? Watch the vultures descend? I would have loved her, Grayson said, and I would have fought for her. Vivian didn't respond. Grayson stepped closer. Her name is Sienna now, and I'm going to find her. Not to bring her into this house, but to make sure she never has to walk through it. Vivian turned away. Do what you must. He did. That night, Grayson sat in his study, files strewn across his desk, the city lights flickering outside the massive windows. But his thoughts weren't on business or numbers. They were on her, Sienna, on the way she looked when he first saw the necklace, on how quickly her face shifted from confusion to fear to pain. And now, knowing what his mother had done, what she'd buried for over 2 decades, he felt like everything he once trusted had rotted from the inside. She wasn't just a hotel maid. She was the sister he never got to protect. He picked up the hospital report again. Her name had been Isabel Wolfe. But that name had been erased by lies, by shame, by silence. Sienna Cruz had grown up alone, in hiding, never knowing who she truly was. And now, Grayson realized, she might never believe he truly wanted to find her for the right reasons. But he would try. He had to. Across town, Sienna stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, the necklace once again resting around her neck. It was cold against her skin, and yet comforting. A symbol of something lost, but also something found. She stared out at the skyline, lights blinking like distant stars, and tried to steady her breathing. The truth had shattered her world. Everything she thought she knew, gone. Her name wasn't truly hers. Her mother, the woman who had kissed every scraped knee and celebrated every small victory, wasn't her biological mother. And yet, none of that made her love Elena any less. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her hotel ID badge. Her fingers gripped it tightly before she walked to the edge of the roof and tossed it into the wind. It fluttered like a falling feather, then vanished from sight. But the necklace, she kept. Because even if her identity had been stolen from her at birth, that locket connected her to something, someone, to Grayson, to a brother she never knew she had. Inside the apartment, Elena stood at the door, watching quietly. She didn't speak, didn't intrude. She knew Sienna needed time, but she also knew one thing for certain. Sienna wasn't running anymore. Not from her past, not from the truth. The next morning, Sienna sat in the kitchen, a mug of lukewarm tea between her palms. Elena entered and sat across from her, silent at first. "I'm not angry at you," Sienna said suddenly. Elena looked up, surprised. Was confused, hurting, but not angry. Elena's eyes welled with tears. "You saved me," Sienna added. "You gave me a life full of kindness. I've seen women call their children names in grocery stores. I've seen anger where love should be. But you," her voice caught, "you gave me a love when you didn't have to." Elena reached out, took her hand. "And I'll keep giving it, no matter what name you choose, no matter where this leads." Sienna nodded slowly. "It's not over." Elena agreed. "It's just beginning." Across the city, Grayson was already making arrangements. Background checks, addresses, hotel employment files. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but he wouldn't stop looking. Because, for the first time in his life, Grayson Wolfe wasn't chasing wealth or power. He was chasing family. And he'd never stop until Sienna knew she belonged somewhere. Because despite the lies, the theft, the silence of a mother's sin, one truth remained. She was loved, her name. And now, she was finally seen. Sienna sat alone at a corner table in the quiet cafe, her fingers curled around a chipped mug of black coffee. The steam curled around against the early morning light as her thoughts churned, just as unsettled. She didn't notice the tall man in a charcoal coat until his shadow spilled across the table. Grayson stood there, not with the authority of a billionaire or the sharpness of an heir, but with gentleness in his eyes. "May I sit?" he asked softly. She looked up at him, lips tight. "You already found me. Might as well." He slid into the chair across from her, resting his hands on the table, palms open. "I didn't come to push. I just want to talk." Sienna stayed quiet. "I found your mother," he continued. Elena, she's strong. Sienna flinched slightly. She's my mother. Grayson nodded slowly. She is, and I owe her more than I can say. He slid a folded piece of paper toward her. There's a clinic downtown, a genetic lab. They'll do a full sibling DNA test. You don't have to do it, but if you want answers, it's there. She stared at the paper, unmoving. He added gently, no cameras, no press, no one else will ever know. Silence stretched between them, brittle and fragile. I'll do it, she said at last, but on one condition. Grayson leaned forward slightly. Anything? You stop chasing me after this, she said. Either way, no surprise visits, no dramatic gestures. Just let me go. A muscle tightened in his jaw. He looked down. If that's what you want. Twi is, she lied. He nodded, slid the paper closer to her hand, then stood. You can text me if you decide. A wave. She didn't watch him leave, but her hands trembled as she picked up the paper. 2 days later, she stood outside the glass doors of the lab. She had already signed the forms. Her mouth still tasted like metal from the cotton swab. It was done. Now she just had to wait. But it wasn't the waiting that hurt. It was what it meant. Across town, Grayson stood outside a modest apartment complex, holding a small bouquet of white daisies. He took a deep breath before knocking on the door. Elena opened it. Her face tightened when she saw him, but then softened. It came alone. I always meant to, he said. She stepped aside. Then come in. The apartment was small, tidy, and filled with warmth, a sharp contrast to the coldness of the Wolfe estate. Grayson took it all in silently. Thank you, he said, turning to her, for saving her, for giving her a life, for giving her what our family never could. Elena sat, hands folded in her lap. I didn't plan to become a mother, but when I held her, I knew I couldn't let go. She turned out strong. Leave left her alone, but it faded just as quickly. Grayson, I'm not well. He stiffened. What do you mean? She hesitated. Lung disease. The doctors caught it late. There's not much to be done now. His chest tightened. Does Sienna know? For now. And I'd like to keep it that way. For now. Because I want her to make choices with a clear heart, not out of fear of losing me. I ran from your family because I wanted to give her more. I needed her to have more. Unseen in the hallway, Sienna stood frozen, her fingers covering her mouth, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Sienna remained hidden in the hallway, her breath catching in her throat. She hadn't meant to overhear. She'd only come home to find a letter, her scarf, and found the door ajar. But now, the truth spilled into her ears like broken glass. Elena was dying, and she hadn't said a word. Sienna wanted to storm in, to demand why, but instead she stayed frozen, her hand gripping the wall, her heart breaking soundlessly. After Grayson left, Sienna crept quietly into her room. She didn't want Elena to see her crying. Not tonight, not yet. She curled into a ball on her bed, clutching the locket against her chest like it was an anchor. Her mind ran in circles. Grayson, the test, the truth, and now this. This quiet ticking clock inside the woman who had raised her. The next day arrived with gray skies and the weight of the unknown. Sienna didn't speak to Elena as she left for work. She couldn't. The words wouldn't come, but inside her pocket, she carried the clinic receipt and a folded note Grayson had left behind. The results arrived that evening. She opened the envelope with trembling hands, alone in the bathroom, door locked, heart racing. It was all there, printed in black and white. Sibling match, 99.9%. Her knees gave out and she sank to the floor, the paper slipping from her fingers. She didn't cry loud. She didn't scream. For the sobs that racked her body were silent and raw. But the silent victory overturned by physical fatigue for the truth she never asked for and for the strange, aching hope that had taken root the moment Grayson first said, "Sister." A gentle knock came at the door. She couldn't move. couldn't speak. "Sienna?" Grayson's voice came softly through the wood. "I won't say anything you don't want to hear. But I meant it when I said, you don't have to be anyone you're not." She pressed her palm to the door. "I know this is overwhelming. I can't imagine what you're feeling. But just know," his voice broke slightly, "you will always be my sister, even if you never say it back." Silence. Then, slowly, the lock clicked. The door creaked open. Grayson stood there, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and something gentler, something deeper. Sienna didn't speak. She simply stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him, and buried her face into his chest. For the first time, she let herself cry into someone else's shoulder. He held her like a brother would, no promises, no demands, just presence, just love. Later that night, Sienna stood by the window in her bedroom, the moonlight catching the edges of the locket around her neck. It sparkled like it had that first day in the suite. But now, it didn't feel like a question. It felt like a bridge. Behind her, Elena peeked in. "Be alarmed? You opened it?" she asked. Sienna turned. "I did." "I have a brother," she whispered, "but I'll always have you." Elena nodded, her smile quivering. "Then, I did something right." Sienna crossed the room and hugged her. No more lies, no more hiding. Tomorrow would bring change, but tonight, they were still a family. And finally, Sienna knew it didn't matter what name she had at birth. What mattered was who had stayed when it counted. The invitation came in the form of a folded letter, left gently on the counter beside her morning tea. Sienna stared at it for a long moment before unfolding the note. "Come home with me. Let me show you where you were meant to grow up. Grayson." She held her breath. The Wolfe estate had always been just a name to her, a place whispered in hotel halls, splashed across headlines, wrapped in marble and money. Now it was real, and she wasn't sure if she belonged there or if she even wanted to. But she went. The car ride was quiet. Grayson sat beside her, glancing her way now and then, giving her space. When they reached the iron gates, she tensed. The mansion beyond looked like something out of a museum. Stone columns, velvet curtains, golden chandeliers glowing behind tall glass windows. "Breathe," Grayson said gently. She tried. The butler opened the front doors. They stepped inside. Sienna had never walked on floors that polished. She had never smelled air so clean it almost felt fake. And then came Vivienne. She stood at the top of the staircase, flawless in a cream silk dress, her hair swept back like she belonged in a fashion magazine. But her eyes, cold, calculating, locked onto Sienna like a threat. And Sieving sighed, voice sharp as glass, "You're the girl with the locket." Sienna's steps faltered. Grayson stepped forward. "She's your daughter, Mother, whether you acknowledge it or not." Vivienne's smile didn't reach her eyes. "She may be family by blood, but she will never be one of us." The words landed like a slap. Sienna looked down at her shoes. Part of her wanted to run. She didn't want this house. She didn't want to beg for space in a family that never looked for her. Grayson didn't hesitate. "He's more of a wolf than you'll ever be," he said, voice tight with fury. Vivienne's expression didn't change, but the silence that followed said everything. Sienna turned to him. "Take me home." He nodded. But he didn't take her back to her old apartment. Instead, he led her to a tall building in the heart of the city. The elevator opened to a wide, sun-drenched space with floor-to-ceiling windows. Hardwood floors, a little kitchen with a note on the fridge, a bedroom with sheets that still smelled new. Hesitant. "You don't have to stay here forever, but I wanted you to have something that's yours." Sienna stepped inside. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "It feels too big." "You'll grow into it." She smiled faintly, blinking back the emotion she didn't want to show. That night, she curled up on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her, her textbook open on her lap. She had enrolled in hospitality management, finally, allowing herself to dream beyond scrubbing floors. Grayson helped where he could. He connected her to mentors, paid the first semester's tuition, sent silent support through gestures, never pressure. Just presence. He made her tea during late study nights, ordered her pizza when she forgot to eat. Once, he even stayed up helping her memorize hotel safety regulations. They learned each other slowly, like real siblings. They argued over the thermostat, fought over how much sugar belonged in coffee, shared old cartoons on streaming apps, and laughed over the absurd animation styles. And one night, curled up on the balcony, city lights glowing beneath their feet, Sienna asked the question that had lingered in her heart. TJ progressed, holding the ass. Grayson looked at her. There was a pause, then a slow shake of his head. Every lie was a weight, he said. You're the only part that feels real. Sienna didn't cry. She just nodded, quietly. And for the first time since this all began, she believed she was exactly where she was meant to be. Weeks passed, and slowly the penthouse began to feel less like a stranger's space and more like her own. Sienna added small touches, a potted plant on the windowsill, a stack of books by the bed, a faded photo of Elena tucked inside her mirror frame. She found comfort in routines, morning walks to the corner cafe, late-night tea, Grayson stopping by to drop off her favorite pastries without saying a word. One morning, she stood at the tall windows overlooking the city and whispered aloud, "This view was never meant for someone like me." Behind her, Grayson replied, "Maybe it was always meant for you. You just didn't know it yet." She turned, startled. "I didn't hear you come in," she said. He handed her a coffee. "That's because you were too busy doubting yourself again." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "It's hard not to." Grayson leaned against the counter, watching her. "You've done more with nothing than most people do with everything. You belong here more than anyone I know." She looked away, blinking fast. Compliments still felt like something she had to earn, not accept. Then came the email, an internship offer at one of the Wolfe family hotels. She hesitated before opening it. Grayson knocked gently on her door later that night. "You don't have to take it. I'll support you, no matter what." "I want to earn my place," she said quietly, "not be handed one." He smiled. "Then show them who you are." And she did. She showed up the next day, in slacks too big and shoes a little scuffed, but her heart was steady. The staff didn't know who she was, and that was how she preferred it. She started at the front desk, answering phones, checking in, guests, learning from the ground up. She was proud to be just Sienna again. But Grayson watched from afar, proud, protective, always nearby without crowding her. One night, she found a note left on her pillow. "Strongest roots grow in unexpected soil. You are not your beginning, you are everything you choose to become." There was no name, but she knew who wrote it. She held it to her chest for a long time before folding it into her journal. That weekend, Grayson invited her to a casual dinner on the penthouse rooftop. They ate tacos out of foil wrappers and drank sparkling water under a string of borrowed fairy lights. "I never thought this would be my life," she admitted. "Me neither," he said, "but I wouldn't change it." They watched the stars in silence for a while. Then Sienna asked, "Do you think she still regrets it, your mother?" Grayson exhaled. "I don't know, but I stopped waiting for her apology the day you forgave her more than she deserved." Sienna nodded, thoughtful. "Beat me up," she whispered. "You were never lost," he replied. She looked at him, and for the first time her smile didn't carry a trace of sorrow. "I think I want to tell the world," she said. "Not for the press, not for drama, just because I'm not afraid anymore." Grayson raised his glass. To the girl who once cleaned penthouse suites, now claiming her place at the top. Sienna laughed, eyes wet. To the brother who found her before she even knew she was lost. They clinked their glasses softly. And as the city pulsed beneath them, lights flickering like distant stars, Sienna finally felt what she never had before. Not just safe, not just wanted, but whole. Vivian Wolfe's name trended briefly after the news broke. An official statement from Wolfe Holdings confirmed the matriarch had been diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. The media whispered sympathy, but inside the penthouse, the silence was heavier than the headlines. Grayson stood by the window, phone in hand, reading the update again and again as if the words would change. "Be okay?" Sienna asked from behind him, her voice softer than usual. He didn't turn. "They say she had 6 months, maybe less." Sienna walked closer, wrapping her arms around herself. "You haven't decided if you'll go," she said. He finally turned to look at her. "I don't know what I'd even say." "You don't have to forgive her," Sienna said, stepping beside him, "but you need to decide if hate is how you want to remember her." He said nothing, just stared out into the city he'd learned to navigate so well. Buildings, meetings, plans, but none of it prepared him for this. That night, he drove alone to the Wolfe estate. The hallways were dimmer than he remembered, the silence thicker. Vivian lay in a grand bed surrounded by roses she couldn't smell and portraits of people she hadn't spoken to in years. When Grayson entered, she looked up, her expression unreadable. "I wondered if you'd come," she said, voice thin but sharp. "I almost didn't," he replied. Vivian chuckled weakly, still brutally honest. "I didn't come for closure, I came for the truth." She closed her eyes. "The truth is ugly." "Then don't dress it up," he said. Vivian shifted slightly, struggling to sit up straighter. "Forgave myself for that affair," she said quietly. "Your father forgave me, but I never did. And when she was born, I saw everything I wanted to forget." Grayson's jaw tensed. "I thought I was protecting our name. I convinced myself I had no choice," she continued. "But in doing that, I didn't just lose her. I lost you too." Grayson's throat tightened. "You didn't lose me because of your mistakes, Mother. You lost me because you chose them." Vivian nodded faintly. "I know." A long pause filled the room. Then she looked at him. Truly looked. "She's beautiful," Vivian whispered. "So much like your father around the eyes. To a life now, one you weren't part of. I know that too." He stood there, staring down at the woman who had built empires and buried secrets with the same manicured hands. For the first time in his life, she looked small. "I came to say goodbye," he said at last. He turned and walked away without waiting for her reply. Outside, he took a long breath and let go. Back in the city, time moved forward. Sienna's graduation arrived under a bright spring sky. Her name was called last. The auditorium erupted in applause, none louder than Grayson's. She spotted him in the crowd, tears in his eyes, clapping like she'd just won the world. After the ceremony, he pulled her aside and handed her a small white envelope. She opened it, expecting a card, maybe a letter. Instead, it was a deed to a boutique hotel on the Upper West Side. "I know you wanted to start from the ground up," he said, smiling through his own nerves. "So, here's the ground." She blinked, confused. "What is this?" "Luxury Parks," she said. "Not as a gift, as a launchpad. Build the life you want." She clutched the deed, her vision blurring. And then she fell into his arms, sobbing not from grief but from gratitude. They stood there for a long time, no words spoken, just the weight of everything they had survived between them. When Sienna finally pulled away, her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes held something new alark. "I'm going to make it something different," she whispered. "A place that feels like home to people who never had one." Grayson nodded, pride swelling in his chest. "Then it'll be the most important hotel in the city." The weeks that followed were filled with paint samples, budget spreadsheets, and vendor calls. Sienna dove into the project with a fire she didn't know she had. The once-abandoned structure slowly became her vision. Warm lighting, local artwork, affordable rates, and a rooftop garden where guests could breathe. Grayson visited often, not to oversee, but to lend a hand. He carried boxes, hanged signs, and argued with her about which coffee machine was the best investment. Late one night, as they stood side by side on the rooftop, watching the city glow beneath them, He handed her a small velvet pouch. Inside was the silver locket she'd left behind months ago, newly polished and glimmering under the stars. "I thought you should have this back," he said softly. She turned it over in her hands, opening the clasp to reveal something new inside. 2 tiny photos, one of her as a baby, wrapped in Elena's arms, and one of her now, standing beside Grayson at her graduation. "Are you had these added?" she asked, voice trembling. He nodded. "Because your life started with loss, but it's not ending there." Sienna pressed the locket to her heart. "I still miss her," she said, "even after knowing the truth." "Helena saved you," Grayson replied. "She gave you the part of life our mother never could." Sienna looked up at the sky. "I wish she could see this." "She counseled," he said. "She always did." A gentle wind swept over them, carrying warmth despite the night. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full, like peace. The boutique hotel opened quietly, without press or ribbon cutting, just as Sienna wanted. The first guests were a young woman and her child, escaping something they didn't speak about. Sienna welcomed them personally, handed the child a coloring book and whispered, "You're safe here." Grayson watched from the doorway, arms crossed, a quiet smile on his face. Weeks later, Vivian Wolfe passed away in her sleep. There was no grand funeral, only a simple private memorial. Sienna chose not to attend. Grayson didn't ask her to. Instead, they lit a candle together at the rooftop garden and let it burn until the sunrise. "Broken," Grayson said as the candle flickered, "but she was still human." "Even broken people can love," Sienna replied, "but that doesn't mean they always know how." The wind shifted again, and they stood in silence, siblings not by choice, but by fate, and now, by something deeper than blood. In the months that followed, the boutique hotel became a refuge. Word spread quietly through community centers, shelters, and late-night conversations in whispered circles. It was a place where people weren't asked why they needed rest, only if they wanted tea or coffee. And every time someone stepped into the lobby, they saw the plaque on the front desk. "The Isabel Home, for those who need a beginning." Beneath it, in smaller letters, "In memory of the girl who was lost and the woman she became." Sienna stood behind that desk every morning with her locket around her neck and a smile on her face. She wasn't just someone's sister now. She was exactly who she was meant to be. The sky was overcast as Sienna stepped out of the car, the necklace clasped tightly in her palm. The small graveyard sat quiet at the edge of the city, nestled between whispering pines and weathered stones. Her steps were slow, heavy, not with doubt, but with the weight of everything this moment meant. She stopped in front of the modest headstone. Sienna Cruz. In 1964, 2025. Chose love. Sienna knelt, brushing her fingers over the carved letters. Her other hand opened slowly, revealing the delicate sapphire necklace, the very one that changed her life. She placed it gently at the base of the stone. "You gave me life," she whispered, "even when it cost you everything." The wind rustled the trees, almost like a response. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I'll never forget what you gave me. Not your blood, maybe, but your heart. That was always mine." A tear slid down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. She turned to find Grayson holding a bouquet of white roses. No words passed between them. He simply crouched beside her, laid the roses down, and let the silence wrap around them like a prayer. They stood there for a while, siblings by fate, bonded by truth, mourning the woman who had saved them both in different ways. When they finally turned to leave, Sienna's hand lingered on the stone. "I hope you're proud of me," she whispered. Built Bit City, back at her hotel. The city buzzed with afternoon life. Sienna moved through the quiet halls alone, thinking. In the laundry room, once her daily station, she noticed something hanging on a hook. Her old maid's uniform, the navy blue apron, the name badge, S. Cruz. She stared at it for a long moment, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Behind her, Grayson's voice broke the quiet. "You still have that?" She turned, chuckling. "Apparently, guess it got buried in the back room." He crossed his arms. "You going to wear it to your next gala?" She laughed, genuine and warm. "Maybe just to remind myself." "Of what?" "I started here, but I'm not ending here." They walked together into the kitchen. Sienna helped stir sauce while Grayson handed out menus to guests. The staff chuckled. Nobody could get him to wear an apron, but he tried, clumsily. Later that night, under chandeliers and soft music, the newly renovated hotel hosted its first gala. Sienna stood at the top of the staircase, watching as guests arrived in flowing dresses and pressed tuxedos. It wasn't just her night. It was a tribute to every hand that had ever scrubbed a floor or folded a sheet and dared to dream of something more. She descended the stairs as a soft piano melody played. Grayson took the mic and tapped it once. The room quieted. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. "To my sister." Sienna blushed. "To the girl who once cleaned rooms and now owns them? To the heart of this place, Isabel." Applause erupted, glasses raised, smiles all around. Sienna stepped forward, eyes misting. "To the brother," she said softly, "who gave me back my name." The applause echoed through the ballroom, but Sienna barely heard it. Her eyes were locked on Grayson's, and in them, she saw everything: pride, love, and the quiet grief of the years they'd lost. She stepped away from the microphone, and guests returned to their champagne and conversation. But a few eyes stayed on her, moved not just by the story they'd all learned, but by the grace with which she carried it. Later, she slipped away from the main room and stood at the window of her office, the one that used to be a mop closet when she worked here as a maid. Now it had warm lighting, elegant chairs, and her name on a gold plaque outside the door. Isabel Sienna Wolfe, General Manager. She pulled the curtain slightly aside and looked out onto the city lights. In the reflection of the glass, she caught her own image. Not the girl who once begged for tips, but a woman who'd found her place, her truth, and her voice. Grayson knocked gently before stepping in. "Thought I'd find you here." She smiled without turning. "I still like quiet corners. Even when you own the whole building. Especially then." He walked to her side, and they stood together, watching the glowing skyline. "Do you miss her?" she asked softly. "Elena?" She nodded. He said, "In a way I never expected to. I only met her once, but I owe her everything." "We both do." He glanced at her. "You sure about leaving the necklace?" As he said, "It belonged to the woman who raised me. I don't need to carry it anymore to remember who I am." He placed something small in her palm. A new necklace. Same sapphires, same delicate silver design, but newly crafted. "These one's yours," he said, "to remember where you came from and how far you've come." She clutched it, overwhelmed. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." Her eyes shimmered. "Thank you, brother." He smiled. "That still feels new." It still is. The next morning, news outlets were ablaze. Last two words slipped unhearing. 2 episodes. "Was this something else's too? How can you help me?" he asked. Grayson Wolfe. Photographs of her at the gala circulated everywhere. Her standing beside Grayson, holding a glass of champagne, wearing the soft blue dress she once thought was too expensive to even touch. But none of it mattered. Sienna turned off her phone and walked down the hallway of her hotel, barefoot, coffee in hand. She peeked into the kitchen, smiled at the breakfast check hand, at a lobby of appointment that had been at the log kitchenette. She didn't care for headlines, for tabloids, for internet buzz. All she wanted was peace. She passed by a young maid nervously folding towels at the corner. Sienna stopped. "Take your time," she said gently. "Fold once, then again. You'll get the hang of it." The girl looked up, startled. "Thank you, Miss Wolfe." Sienna smiled and walked on, placing a hand over the new necklace that rested against her collarbone. For the first time in her life, she wasn't clinging to what was stolen. She was stepping fully into what was hers. The grand ballroom shimmered with golden lights, but it wasn't set up for a gala this time. Rows of chairs filled the space, and a modest wooden podium stood in front. The banner behind it read, "Empower Her, Hospitality Workshop for Young Women." At the center of it all stood Sienna Wolfe. She wore a tailored navy blazer over a soft white blouse, her name pinned just above her heart. The same heart that had once hidden beneath a maid's uniform now stood fully seen, fully honored. She smiled at the crowd of young women before her, each face filled with hope, fear, hunger. She cleared her throat. "I once cleaned these very carpets. I used to carry a mop and wear shoes 2 sizes too big. And I remember what it felt like to believe my voice didn't matter." Murmurs and emotional nods rippled through the audience. "People, I'm standing here to tell you, it does. Your voice matters, your presence matters. You're not just working jobs, you're building futures." Applause broke out. Sienna stepped back, hands steady, her smile deep and true. In the back of the room, Grayson stood beside his fiancée, Amelia, a poised art curator with warm eyes and a quick wit. They both clapped proudly. Amelia leaned toward Grayson. "She's remarkable." He nodded. "She always has been." After the workshop, Sienna walked through the halls of her hotel with quiet ease. She greeted guests with a sincere smile, nodded at staff with the warmth of someone who had once stood in their shoes. She stopped at the front desk, adjusted a small, crooked brochure, and complimented a nervous intern on her posture. From a distance, Grayson watched her. Her shoulders didn't shrink anymore. How she spoke with calm authority. How she no longer seemed like someone surviving in a borrowed world. She belonged here. Entirely? Later, in her office, Sienna poured herself a cup of tea and settled into the plush armchair near her window. On the desk stood a simple silver frame. Inside it, a photo, Elena holding her as a toddler, their cheeks pressed together, smiles soft, eyes shining. Sienna picked it up, brushed a thumb over the glass. "You didn't throw me away," she whispered. "You gave me roots." The office was filled with subtle reminders of her journey. A floral scented candle Elena used to keep on their nightstand. A small embroidered cloak that once sat on their kitchen table, now draped beneath her awards. But the biggest reminder sat in the corner. A shadow box frame with her first hotel badge and a worn cleaning cloth sealed inside it. Above the desk, her nameplate gleamed. Sienna Wolfe, Managing Director. Outside, the city hummed with life, but inside, there was stillness. Fulfillment. Later that evening, Sienna walked the halls again, alone this time. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floors as she paused before the door marked Suite 2409. The room that had changed everything. She stared at it for a moment, letting the memory come. The scent of lavender cleanser, the sound of a vase shattering, the moment Grayson first demanded to know about the necklace. A presence stepped beside her. Gracie asked. "You still remember the room number?" Grayson asked, smirking. She chuckled. "I never forgot." He tapped the nameplate beside the door. "Still the best cleaner I've ever seen." She looked at him with affection. "And the best big brother I never knew I needed." They stood in silence for a beat. Inside the glass display, near Suite 2409, sat the necklace. The delicate silver chain, the tiny blue sapphires that once sparked a world of questions, it was mounted on dark velvet with a small plaque that read, "Mena, for truth, for the girl who became more." Sienna had decided to place it there, not to forget but to remember. Every time she passed that hallway, she didn't see a past that haunted her. She saw a path that shaped her. Grayson folded his arms. "Funny how this hallway used to be where things ended for you." She tilted her head, eyes soft. "Now it feels like the beginning." He smiled, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, polished key. "By the way, Amelia and I are looking at venues. We'd like to have the wedding at your hotel." Sienna blinked. "Here? Really?" "It's where my family became whole," he said. "Where my sister found her name again." Her throat tightened with emotion. "I'd be honored." The next morning, the city rose with its usual noise, horns, footsteps, hurried chatter. But inside the Wolfe Boutique Hotel, the atmosphere buzzed with something else: legacy, hope, and healing. Sienna stood in the staff lounge before the morning shift began. New hires, managers, and trainees all looked at her attentively. She held her coffee and began with a smile. "We don't serve rooms here, we serve people. Every sheet we tuck, every floor we mop, every guest we greet. It's a part of a bigger story." They nodded, inspired. No one would guess she once held a mop instead of a microphone, but she hadn't forgotten. After the meeting, she returned to her office and opened a notebook. A new program was in the works, a scholarship initiative for underprivileged girls wanting to enter the hospitality industry. She was building a bridge for others, just as someone once did for her, even if that someone had started with a lie. Later that day, as she walked past the lobby, a young girl stood staring at the display case holding the necklace. "Is that yours?" the girl asked. Sienna knelt beside her. It was, but now it belongs to the story. The girl frowned. "What story?" Sienna smiled, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The one that says you can come from anywhere and still end up somewhere incredible." That evening, as the sun dipped low and cast amber streaks across the city skyline, Sienna stood at the rooftop garden with Grayson and Amelia. The trio looked out over the glowing buildings, the lit-up sign of the hotel just beneath them. "Did you ever imagine this?" Grayson asked her. Sienna chuckled. "Not in a million years." Amelia raised her glass. "To the girl who found her family and gave it a future." They clinked glasses, the sound crisp in the air. As night fell and the stars emerged one by one, Sienna sat quietly at her desk, flipping open her journal. On the last page she wrote, "Sienna is Sienna Isabel Wolfe. I was once a maid in Suite 2409. Now I am its owner. But more than that, I am my mother's daughter and my brother's sister. And I'm home." She capped the pen, leaned back in her chair, and looked around her office one last time for the night. The framed photo of Elena, the plaque on her desk, the quiet hum of peace. And through the open window, a gentle breeze carried the city's song, a lullaby for a girl who once didn't belong, but now had everything: home, a hotel, and her real name,